Hi, this is Ginger Cook, and this is what I refer to as a Ginger Snap video lesson. And what we're going to be doing now is these are going to be 10 common mistakes that acrylic artists often make. And we're going to cover those today. I tried it live a little while ago, and we were testing out some new equipment. So I want to appreciate the guys that hung in there with me, but I thought we would just go ahead and start again with this. So, 10 common mistakes that acrylic artists make. So let's just start with number 1. Okay, so number 1 on my list is not doing an underpainting. So what do we mean by that? Well, if you start out with a piece of canvas and say you have a painting like this, all right? Here's a painting of this nice beach scene. It's got some, kind of a golden sunset, and we've got a beach and so forth. Your canvas needs to have something on it. And so in this case, I actually painted this canvas a sort of a metallic gold on the underpainting, and I'm going to show you that to you. So here's what my underpainting looked like on this canvas. Now I know that it looks very bright yellow to you, and because of the way that my glare is on the lights. If I turn it up like this, you can kind of see how it's kind of gold right here, cameras, because we've got a lot of lights on right here. So you have to turn down a few. So you maybe have too many, turn down a couple because we're trying out new camera equipment. But anyway, you can see how gold it is. And I taped the sides on the sides here because I was going to do something else with this one, maybe do a pouring medium. But the idea is that you need an underpainting, and that helps your picture, that helps your acrylic paint grab to your canvas, because your canvas is, covered with something from the factory called gesso. It's a white gesso, and it's anybody's guess what they're using anymore for that. Every brand's different. But the first layer of paint sets the tone for your canvas and also allows your acrylic paint to grab, and this is really important. All right, so that's the first thing you want to make sure you're always doing. We have an artist friend in Hawaii, and she paints everything red first. That's her signature underpainting is red. You can experiment around. For instance, in a painting like this was all done in gold, but in this particular painting here that I did a two-part underpainting. I did the bottom half in a very, very dark color, and I did the top half in blue, the underpainting. And then I went ahead and painted my picture. So you could do it in fours. It doesn't have to be that, depending on, again, it depends on what you're painting, okay? And so that's the color that I want underneath the color. All right. Now the next mistake that a lot of acrylic artists makes is not painting the farthest thing away first. Let me just put this canvas back a minute. Not painting the farthest thing away first. So you start off with the sky, and then you start off with these background trees, and the last thing you're going to be painting are these pots. So a lot of times you'll see people, they'll start with the pots and then they'll try to do this and that. Start with the farthest thing away forward. We do it with this canvas as well. We started with the clouds. I'm going to kind of hold that up at an angle like this. And then we finished the sky, then we did the water, then we came forward with these background trees, and the last thing is the foreground. So literally you start from front to back. That's very important on your painting. Okay, now our next one is not putting out a full plate of colors. And I see a lot of artists get really lazy, even in my classes that I see in person. They don't want to put out all the colors. Now here's the deal, you guys. If you've ever watched the colors that I use in my paintings, we do white and phthalo blue and cad yellow medium, and I keep them everything right here. And you put them in order too, okay? Make sure your paints are in some sort of order when you put them out on your table to use. And burnt umber, I'd probably put the browns maybe on this side. And I have a yellow oxide, okay? So there's not a lot. When you look at what I'm putting out, these are the colors that we use, okay? Phthalo blue and ultramarine blue. So that when I take my plate or my palette paper, depending on the size, I would write white here on the plate. Then I would write phthalo blue, P-H-T-H-A-L-O, phthalo blue. And I would write that because when you put your colors out, particularly after you mix them, you might forget which is which. Sometimes it's hard to tell the purple after you get going for a while. So anyway, you'll see me right around the plate and then put all the colors out. And if you people say, well, they dry out or whatever, take a little fine mister, mist them, but get in the habit of putting out a full plate of all your colors that you're going to be using in the painting. I think that's very important. Please notice there's no green in here and there's no black. That leads us to one of our biggest mistakes that I see that artists, acrylic new artists, particularly new ones, make is they use black to darken their colors. Now this is just not going to work for you because it's going to kill everything dead. People often say to me, you know, when they look at my pictures, I go, and particularly I see this in my art galleries, they'll say, Ginger, you have the most beautiful colors in your pictures. I just love the colors. So much of this is because when I'm not using black to darken a color. So if we're not using black to darken a color, how are you darkening it? Well, let's just talk about that for a minute. Let's just put out a little, see, I think I've got some phthalo blue here. That's ultramarine. And then here's a little white. We're just going to do a little experiment, okay? Let's just put out a little experiment and show you what I'm talking about. Because it just can't say this enough, all right? So here's some white. And let's see, I think I had some phthalo blue sitting right here. A little phthalo blue. I'm going to make it dark green, all right? So I'm going to make a dark green. Now, if I'm going to make it kind of a two-part tip here. If I'm going to make it dark green, I have to start with the darkest color first. In other words, if the dark green is one of those colors, because your color wheel all has a grayscale, 10 tones of, you know, kind of white being one and black being another. So somewhere in these, you know, 8 colors of shades of gray is where your color is going to fall into. So if you're trying to make, say, this dark green right here, let's zoom in so you can see it. It's just going to pull down. Trying to make this dark green right here, that's going to fall, if this were a black and white picture, on this side of the grayscale. So if you're going to make this color green, okay, this is real important, you start with your darkest color first, which in this case would be blue. Now, for instance, one way you can darken a color, I'm going to show you, darken a green, you can use burnt umber, which will darken a color. You know, you can do that. You can use burnt umber. You could use red. Why red? Because red is opposite green on the color wheel. So you don't have to remember this, just get a color wheel. So what's opposite? A little tiny bit of red will darken the green, okay? So, all right, so we could do red. We could get out a little red. Now, one of the reds I like to use often is cadmium red because it's got a little yellow in it, and yellow and blue make green. So that's a good one to darken red with. We'll put a little of that out. Or what about purple? Could you use purple to darken a green? Sure, you could, because again, red and blue is purple. And so that would be a good way to darken it. You do not need black, okay? So now, let's just take a minute and do that. So if I take, starting with the blue first, here's the phthalo blue, and I'll add a tiny bit of yellow, maybe a little bit more yellow. Okay, here's some yellow. Maybe I'll add a little tiny bit, like 5% burnt umber. I've got a really dark green. You see that? Really nice dark green. Conversely, I could take the same color, here's some blue, like that, a little bit of yellow, okay, and here's a tiny bit of red, cad red medium, a little bit more blue, and I've got a really, again, I've got a very dark green, and they're pretty hard to tell apart. Now let's do it one more time. All right, probably my very darkest will be with the purple, so I've got some phthalo blue here, all right, a little bit of yellow, you know, small amount of yellow just to make sure it's green, okay? Then about 5% purple, and if I add a little bit more, I've got a very dark color. This purple, this is actually darker. Even if I add yellow to it, this is actually the purple will make it, dazzling purple will make it the darkest of all the greens, okay? So those are ways you darken green. Now if I wanted to lighten this green, now this is the key here. This is one of the things you've got to appreciate is that if you take white to any of these colors, this is sort of a blue-green color, and put a little more yellow in it. So if you lighten this, okay, these are your light colors. These fall on yellow, and white fall on the light side of your grayscale. So once you start lightening them, you cannot go back and get them ever dark like this. They'll never go back to this. So this comes up to mistake number, for whatever, number 4, whatever one we're on, is that not painting your darkest color first. In acrylics, you paint the darkest color first and you put the light on it, because if you need to blend in a light color, here's an example of some, you know, an apple with some, you know, bright green, you know, stripes. The dark green was painted first, and then if you want to do a wet on wet technique, you can add the light. But if you did the light and it's wet, you can't go back and blend into the dark green, because you just can't do it. So that's the key. Start with your darkest color first and then add your light, okay? Now, I guess we could also say that if you're mixing on this light side of the grayscale, you start with your lightest colors first. So if we were mixing a light green, we would not start with blue, because dark blue is on the dark side of the grayscale. We would start with yellow. All right, we'd start with yellow first, and then we would add a teeny tiny bit, maybe 1% of blue to make a lighter green. Maybe add a little bit of white here and make a lighter green. And again, if we didn't want it that bright, we could take a tiny bit of red and tone it down and gray it. This is how we would gray it. And why do we want to gray a color? Why would we want a light grayed green? Why would we want that? Well, this gets us to the next mistake that new artists make, or acrylic artists make, is they don't appreciate that the farther the color is in the background, the grayer the green, okay, or the grayer the purple. The colors are grayer as they get farther back, and as they come closer, they're brighter. So if you put a very bright, I can kind of show you this, if I put a very, very bright spring green right here, like that on that painting, now what happened to your eye? Your eye just went right to that and it brought your eye forward, okay? So that's one of the things that the farther things are away, they're grayer. And so and how do you grade colors? Again, you go back to your color wheel. Let me just wipe that off to see if it's dry. It just comes right off. You can just erase it. You go back to your color wheel, which we will do here, a sec here. Go right back to our color wheel, which we hid somewhere. Oh, here it is, sitting on top. And again, anytime you need to make some atmospheric perspective, where you want to make things more grayer, you add the opposite of it on the color wheel. For instance, red grays green, green grays red, purple grays yellow. You wouldn't want a bright yellow spot back here. You just can't have it. For instance, let's take a cleaner brush here. I'll just take a little brush like this and just write out of it. I just want to show you. If you put bright yellow flowers in the back here, and I'm going to show you, if you just did that, you see now that brings your eye right back up into the front of your canvas again. Do you see that? That brought it right back up into your canvas again. So, you wouldn't put bright yellow in the back. You'd have to gray it. So you'd have to put a little purple with it. Let me show you what happens there. Here's a little purple. Like 1%, you guys. Not like a lot of purple. Tiny bit of purple with it. You could do a little bit of purple with it. Red and blue is purple. And then when you put it, it softens it. It's not as bright. You see, the purple is not as bright, and so you need to gray your colors the farther they go back. That's really important. You can't have this bright, glaring green, yellow color like that. So that's one of the common mistakes that acrylic artists make. Let's start with another one. We're doing 10, and so we've kind of to review. We have to do the underpainting, paint from dark to light, paint the farthest thing away first. And let's see, I want to erase this. We want to paint, we don't want to use black to darken a color. We talked about that, not using black to darken a color. And the farther things are away, they're more out of focus. Let me just kind of erase all that. See, the thing I love about acrylics is once they're dry, they have a glaze on them, and we're just fine. We just erased all that. We're in good shape there. So, all right, so then what's the next one that we're talking about? And these are just real key here. Is to not draw on your canvas with a pencil. See, we see that with people. If you use a pencil or a piece of charcoal to draw on your canvas, what happens is that pencil mark will just keep bleeding through. But if you use a piece of chalk, these are new pastels. If I use let's see, let me find something that you can see. Let me find a darker underpainting one. I've got one sitting right here. This is better. Here's a canvas with a dark underpainting on it. Might show you up a little better. Just let you see this a little better. Here we go. So you ready with me? Okay. So if I'm doing this with a new pastel, light chalk, watercolor pencil is okay too. And then you can just take it and you can erase it. All right. But if you use pencil, particularly on a light, well, you couldn't use pencil on this because it's so dark, but if you're talking about just over a white canvas, maybe something like this, a sheet of canvas, and you use a pencil, when you paint over it, that pencil will bleed through. You'll keep seeing the pencil. It's like the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps coming back. And if you use a really dark piece of of charcoal or something, the charcoal is like adding black to your paint. Unless you were to spray it with a spray varnish, that charcoal would mix in with all the colors and muddy up your whole picture, and you wouldn't know what happened. So that would be just the end of that. So, okay, so that being said, so we're going to say paint the farthest thing away, and then the thing that I see a lot, okay, is I do not see artists layering their colors. Everything is too flat. For instance, learning to glaze and layering. For instance, how this painting, as you see, it's darker on this side of these pansies. It's darker on this side of our canvas, and it gets lighter over here. And these little basket pieces, they have lots of colors on them. Do you see that? These pansies are not just one color. They're glazed over with lots of colors. And that's something that you develop in time. But learning to glaze your colors, learning to get things brighter, that's really important. We see that really you'll see that in this one with the bricks. You see how many colors that I've glazed. Started with a very dark brick, like a dark color. Remember, we start from dark to light, and kept adding colors and kept glazing. Some of these bricks have maybe 6 or 7, 10 different shades on them. Okay, this is real important, not making anything too one-dimensional. So okay, I'm going to back out of that a little bit. So that's fun. So if you're wondering, where did she get all these pictures anyway? That's cool, but where did they come from? Well, I have a lot of paintings on YouTube. No doubt you've seen them. But if you go to my website, gingercooklive.gallery, you'll find over 100 video lessons that we have starting at 9 days for $9.95. You can do 9 days worth of lessons, access all 100 lessons in the video library. We add generally 1 to 3 a week. We keep adding new lessons. Those pansies were this current feature for June. Got all kinds of pictures that we're doing. Plus, we have videos that you can just download and buy. If you don't have good internet and you want to just download one particular video, they start at $4.95. All of them are under $15, and some of them are 2-3 hours long. And I think you might really enjoy that. So we'd appreciate check us out, gingercooklive.gallery, and also we appreciate the fact that you caught this this video on YouTube. We appreciate that very much. Again, we'll put this on our website as well for artists that don't always get up there. So I'm going to again encourage you to just in review, make sure that you put all your colors out, and you want to put them in order. Now, somebody said, how does Ginger get all this stuff? Let me just show you. I have like a whole little box of different colored chalks, light colored chalks that I have. Okay, light colored chalks and even brown. But I'm careful where I put it, so I'm not mixing one color into another. I've got a nifty little Lazy Susan like this, see? And I'll put my little basket. This is just a wire basket I found, and I learned this trick from one of my apprentices that used to work in the studio. Every night she would come around and she would put all my blues together, all my reds together. She put the purple next to the red, put the white in the middle. She'd put the browns together, burnt umber, burnt sienna. Because I use the same colors, whatever your colors are. And here's like 2 whites here, like that. And here's our reds. And let's see, I think I had some yellow oxide. You want to make sure you have that. And again, if I need to get this, I can just spin it around. And I also have mixing light. So we just move this a little bit like that. And if you just keep a little organized, and which is, I promise you, I've got some new organization going on here. I also like to keep my caps, so if I lose a cap, I can put another one on. I see that particular paint tube lost a cap, so I can put one on just like that. Don't have to run under the floor to see what happened to it. It's probably somewhere in the studio. Who knows? So, all right, so kind of keep stuff in order. Those are some great tips on how to keep your paints and make your painting experience so much more enjoyable. If you do these things, you're going to find that your painting experience is going to be a night and day difference than you had before. And the final thing I'm going to tell you is that a lot of mistakes that acrylic artists make, this is one, is they forget to varnish. And what does varnish do? We're just going to talk about that. I have a great video on YouTube on how to varnish, and I prefer, my varnish of choice is Liquitex Gloss Medium Varnish. I've been using this for 25 years. Well, longer than that, I think. I love this stuff. And there's a correct way to put it on. And be sure you watch that, because that's real important. And then the other one, people say, well, what's the difference between that and just gloss varnish? This is a painting medium. You can add this to your paints when you're painting. You can add this to your colors. You can just put a little drop of this into your colors, for instance, and you know, if you want to blend or something, that's been used for a long time. But also, it's a little bit thicker, and so it will add a few little brush marks to it and give it, which is nice. I really like that. There's also a matte varnish if you can use, but again, the problem with matte varnish is that sometimes it has a little bit of a white haze to it. So what varnish does is it pops up the color on your picture. It starts popping up, and let me turn this like this so we don't have this glare. You can see this, see how bright these colors are? It literally goes in and pops the colors back up, and you want to do that. And it binds molecularly with your paint and protects it, so that, again, you can take a you know, wet cloth and dust it, or you know, erase something if you want to. It protects your canvas, and it protects your painting, and you really need 2 coats of varnish, minimum 2 coats of varnish, and I highly recommend that. Those are like my favorite brands. But someone asked me when we were shooting this live, what about spray varnish? I have not found it pop. Spray varnish will not pop the colors, in my opinion, as well as these brush-on varnishes go. But if you're doing something very, very flat, kind of where you didn't want any brush marks at all for whatever reason, then you could use a spray varnish. But I'm not as big a fan of spray varnish. You really should be doing it outside, and then you don't want any flies getting into it, or little bugs, and you got to do it without wind, and it's a thing. And anyway, spray varnish is okay. There are times when you want it, but most of the time I prefer a gloss, you know, medium and varnish. So that is, you guys, in retrospect, that is our, you know, 10 common mistakes that acrylics artists make. I hope this was fun and that you got something out of this, and I invite you to come check us out on gingercooklive.gallery. Thanks for watching, and I think this was a great ginger snap lesson, so we're going to just say thank you very much, and we will see you next Monday night live here on YouTube on 7:30. This is where we do these ginger crumbs, some fast ginger crumbs on Monday nights, and then Tuesday nights we're live with a live lesson. Wednesday afternoons at 1, we're generally live on YouTube on my channel at Central Time, and you can look for these videos. The Tuesday and Wednesday ones stay up at those times, but they do not stay up the whole time. We leave Monday's video up, but the Tuesday one and the Wednesday one end up back on our Academy website later on in the week. So thanks very much, and have a wonderful day.